good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody. I'm glad that you all were able to join. As I said in the beginning, but probably not everybody heard, we decided to change the platform because of the last attack. If you remember, we had a Zoom bomb attack last time, and it was really frustrating. So we will try Google Meet now. Before I tell you more about our guest, I'd like to start a new rubric. Every month, we will announce interesting events which are around open data or generally around open data or other just interesting events. And this time, I'd like to announce that the European Datathon has started. It's an opportunity for people to show the capabilities of open data and to win up to 25,000 euros. So not bad. Another thing which is interesting, the New York City Mayor's Office of Data Analytics and Better New York City opened a call for submissions for a virtual and in-person event, which will take place in this year's Open Data Week, which is in the beginning of March. So you can also find some info. I will drop link in the chat, but if it's interesting, check it out. Today we'll be talking about CHISPA.DATA. This is more than an open data platform, and it's a space for citizen control of public entities. We have here John Oliver Coffey. I hope I pronounce your last name. Yeah, right. He's a founder of Natividad, Data Pico, and he will tell us a lot of interesting stuff. Like, for example, this great combo CKAN, WordPress, React.js, Python, and Data Wrapper, and how all these work together to create a great user-friendly experience. Now, before I give him the opportunity to present himself and the company and the project, just to let you know the agenda for today, we have the introduction round where John will introduce himself. Then we'll have his presentation. Then, of course, as always, we have the Q&A session where people will be able to ask questions. Now, there are two ways to ask a question. You can raise your hand or you can drop things in the chat. After the Q&A session, we'll have some time for community announcements and sharing. So if somebody wants to share something with the community, feel free to do it. Finally, it's the closing. If you want to add things to the agenda, feel free to do it in the meeting doc. I already dropped a link, so it's in the chat. As always, I encourage you to open the meeting doc, drop your name, affiliation, what brings you to CKAN. And also, you can write up some suggestions for topics. At the end of the section, you can find space for that. Just to flag to people, the meeting is being recorded. The recording will be uploaded to our YouTube account. I think that's about it. Over to our speaker, John.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time. My name is John Oliver Coffey. I am from Ireland. I've lived in Cali, Colombia for the past 15 years. And I'm a technologist, I guess. I like to jump between the private and public sector. So I have Masters in Economic and Social Development. I've worked at the World Bank and the United Nations in projects that bridge technology for social and economic development. These days, I spend about 70% of my time building software and data teams here in Colombia that work with customers around the world or clients around the world, mostly in the US. And 30 to 40% of my time is dedicated to CHISPA. Do you want me to proceed then through the presentation, or do we do a round of presentations or introductions?
Well, with this amount of people, it will take too much time. Okay. So I suggest we just kick off the presentation.
Okay, very good. So in the next 10 minutes, I want to talk about three things. So who and what is CHISPA? Our data platform with the supreme generosity of Datopian, without who this would not have been possible. And some sample projects that we're running now and how we're running them. Okay, so just to get started then, CHISPA is the word in Spanish for spark. for ignition. We are the catalysts of change, and that's our mission, that's our vision for CHISPA. So our program is dedicated to bringing social impact for Cali, Colombia. It was launched in 2019, and it was co-founded by 3 people, each with more than 20 years experience across communications, management consulting, and technology, with customers and clients ranging from the UN to Harvard to Apple computers. So Andrea is from Cali. She has over 20 years experience in communications in digital agencies internationally, as well as in the public sector in political campaigns. Germán Alfonso is from Bogota, also around 20 years experience as a management consulting, specializing in strategy work and a special interest in crime. So he's very studied on crime and activism, specifically around the Curing Violence program from Northwestern University. I am John Oliver Coffey. Like I said, somewhat of a technologist, have a company. We specialize in data and software teams. And I'm from Ireland, and I've lived in Colombia for the past 15 years or so. So as individuals and as a group, we want to bring our expertise and our networks to bring measurable improvements to important quality of life issues here in Cali, which is a city of 2.5 million people. Maybe 35% live in poverty, maybe 15% or so live in extreme poverty. It's a troubled city. However, there are signs of improvement over the last 10 years or so. So as individuals and as a group in CHISPA, we've worked on projects in Cali ranging from microcredit for bottom of the pyramid entrepreneurs, as well as creating food kitchens in neighborhoods who suffer from hunger as a result of the economic crisis related to the pandemic. So just before I continue, if I'm talking too fast or people don't understand what I'm saying, please leave a message in the chat and I'll slow down or I'll clarify. So that's CHISPA. So we looked, when we started in CHISPA, we said, okay, what are the problems that need solving and what are the problems that we can help solve? We found that there's a huge distrust and doubt about facts in Cali and Colombia as a whole, but in Cali, which is our focus, there's a low availability of information, there are questionable information and sources of information, and the public perception of public entities is at an all-time low. So there's extreme dearth of or low availability of facts and data, there's a distorted reality, there's bad decision-making, there's corruption, and there's extreme lack of confidence, interpersonal lack of confidence, but also lack of confidence in public entities. So we figured, okay, it's information. We talk about facts and data, let's aim there. So everybody wants information. Communicating with the public is vital. Cities know it and people expect it. But in an age of huge amounts of data, it's not easy for a number of reasons. Organizing large quantities of data is complex. The volume of data keeps increasing and new technologies continually spring up. Talent to work in these technology platforms or with data in general is scarce, expensive, and hard to retain. There's a general lack of confidence in public information, and as we all know, fake news and information bubbles are rampant and do not help. So that's the kind of the premise to what would become the CHISPA.DATA platform. So our first project is a platform for transparency in Cali. It's an open data platform for issues that affect quality of life. That's the URL. And this is just a capture of the homepage. It's in Spanish for Spanish speakers. And like the title of my talk suggests, it's more than just an open data portal for cities or for Cali specifically. It's also a platform for engagement and participation in an age of doubt. So the main problems this project addresses is the lack of trust in public entities, widespread fake news, dis and misinformation, and that's not just peculiar to Cali. This is something that's affecting everybody in no small part thanks to social networks. Our first focus on security, just to step back a second, data portals, as many of you will know, are not new. This phenomenon, this trend began maybe 10 or so years ago, when every city, maybe it was a UN mandate or an encouragement, but they said, okay, you need more transparency, make open data portals, which was great. It was a great idea. However, the cost of maintaining these and the cost of building a comprehensive data portal for cities is a huge undertaking. And people, I think, underestimated, or in our view, underestimated the cost of maintaining, the more marginal data sets that nobody uses, nobody visits. And so a lot of these data portals fell into underuse or disuse. So we decided to break that pattern a little bit, and we're going to focus on only a select number of themes and data sets. And our first is security, because in Cali, security it's the topic of the day. It's what everybody talks about. It's the main topic of conversation. Although the security in Cali has been improving over time, the perception of security certainly hasn't. And it's still, averaging out at around 1,000 homicides per year, down from 2,000 homicides maybe 10 years ago or so. So our first focus is on security. As you can see here in the screen cap, in the header section, there's a section called Resumen, which is a summary of the data. So we have there cards and visualizations that show a kind of a macro perspective what's happening. The Diccionario is the data dictionary, which explains the variables and what each of them mean. And then we have an analysis section where we publish reports on security. And then we have a Descarga section, which is the download or the data availability section, where you can download in CSV format or connect via API to get the data. So we get the audited data direct from the National Police of Colombia. We process this data and we publish it. And we provide that data in the format of API and CSV. In fact, CHISPA is the only source of security data in Colombia that is accessible in these standard formats used by data scientists. On top of which we provide data visualizations, memes, podcasts, webinars, explainer videos to explain this complex topic in simple terms to the general public. So the end goal here is not for data geeks to talk to data geeks. It's for people who are interested in the topic to make available the data, but also interpret and translate that data to information in the formats, in the vocabulary, and in the channels where people consume this kind of information. So we want, as we say here locally, we want the local mango seller on the street to understand what's happening in their city. So everything is geared towards that. To facilitate that, then, we created a network of collaborators in media, in academia, and social leaders. And in fact, we've worked with 4 groups of master's students at local universities who use our data and produce additional information and studies about security in the city. The technicals, I'm not going to go deep on technical stuff today, but if anybody has follow-up questions or doubts or queries, please follow up with me afterwards. My email is abundantly available. This is built on and hosted by Datopian, so it's built on Datopian CKAN. And then we use Python in the backend for data pipelines, ETL, etc., and prepping the data. We use React to frame, to design the front end, and then we use, for content management, we use WordPress, which is the content management system most widely used in the world, and it's open source and it's excellent. So that's just a high level of the technical side. We get the data, we're provided with the data directly from the National Police. It's audited data. We prepare it in pipelines. We make it available in the back end, and then we run, say, Tableau for data exploration or Data Wrapper for data visualization to publish this in the site as well as in the social media, the media channels that we're running. Okay, so getting the message out, like I said, is a key part of this. I've shared the links in the chat to some of our channels. We've run podcasts, webinars, lives. We have Instagram. We've got a YouTube channel. So we invite people. We run the data. We produce the information, and then we start talking about it. Most notably, I guess this is our hit video. So we're using a local flavor. As many of you will know, I hope, that Cali is the capital of salsa dancing in the world. So this is a salsa-themed discussion or presentation on homicides in Cali. hope you can hear the music. So there's a salsa track in the background. Okay, I'm not going to dwell on that, but it's just an example of the format of interpreting and expressing the findings of our data in formats that will travel easily in social media and be understood very easily in kind of bullet points by the general public. Okay, so we're doing active citizen engagement. So web publishing has evolved from those rather static data portals, and we're innovating around bots, alerts, personalized content, artificial intelligence to reach audiences where they consume and publish online. So for example, we're going to create a system of CHISPA alerts to generate alerts and public to social media via WhatsApp, SMS, but that are triggered by changes in the data set. So say, for example, the homicide rate in your neighborhood jumps last month compared to the previous month, or the running average for the previous year. We'll create a message that goes to you. So we don't want to rely on the rather traditional method of having a website and hope everybody comes to that. No, we're pushing stuff out. We're messaging, we're alerting, we're going to the channels where people are consuming this information. Personalized notifications, kind of like CHISPA alerts, again, but it's more specific to your neighborhood, what resonates with you specifically, rather than something that's so macro. Partnerships, so we're very, very reliant on this. We put a lot of effort into it. We are talking with primary and secondary schools, to nonprofit organizations, to universities, to social leaders, to public entities and politicians locally. So we have a lot of partnerships running and relationships that are running, in part to provide us with data, but also in part to allow us to reach their audiences. So say, for example, in the public sector, we're very close with what we call the DAGMA here in Cali, which is the environmental agency. They don't have enough funding to report the data that their 7 or 8 sensors are recording in Cali. Their air quality sensors are recording in Cali. So we're doing it with them. I'll talk about that in a second. So that's citizen engagement. Okay, how we engage more specifically students and researchers. We offer the city data to universities, to students and professors. We explain how the platform works and the value of the data and the quality of the data. And then we assign tasks and do workshops. So more specifically, we've worked with master's students. We've given them the data, we've given them tasks saying, okay, look at the effect of the pandemic on homicide rates or sexual violence in the city over the last 3 years. And they've come back and they've allowed us to expand the analysis that we've published, and also it's a way for them to start thinking about their cities. So in terms of data, we verify the quality of the data from the Colombian National Police. We work with volunteers to find or produce new data sets and data sources from DANE, which is the tax authorities, the fiscal people, the DAGMA, which is the environmental agencies, and the entities in charge of mobility in the city. Then we pressurize public entities to provide the data that they are obliged to provide. So very often data, as you probably know, is published in PDFs and inaccessible formats that simply make no sense to anybody, and they're in some oblique part of the web ecosystem of the public entity, so largely useless. We publish visualizations together with students and researchers. So our volunteers use a variety of tools to bring the data to life in visualizations. We explore the data as it becomes available and then analyze and visualize. So we use tools like Tableau, like Google Data Studio and Data Wrapper. So we have a nose for a story. It's not about the data. It's not even just about the visualizations. It's about the story that accompanies this. It's the information that we produce around this. I forgot to translate some of this. So did sexual violence increase, decrease, or was it affected during the pandemic? Did the pandemic have an effect on domestic violence? How does the homicide rate compare with perception of security? Is the change in the number of robberies reported a function of more reported robberies, or in fact more robberies? And there's an interesting point here. And one of our big findings is that in consecutive years since 2013, we found that the homicide rate has halved. So it went from 2,000 roughly to around 1,000, but the perception of security in the city has worsened almost in direct negative proportion to that decrease in homicide. So we wanted to attack that, and that was one of the main tropes, or one of the main stories and analysis that we found and that we expanded on in the public sphere. So we wanted, like I said previously, we wanted to get this in front of students and academics and researchers, and these are some of the people that we're working with locally that have allowed us to scale the effect of what we're doing. We're just 3 people. We're not even specialists on these subjects on security, so we piggyback on with the help of people who are indeed experts in those fields. So more hands on deck, more analysis, more engagement, more messaging. So sample work from our volunteers. You can see here in the top right-hand corner the comparison of personal crime or personal robbery according to gender. Then the second one is the volume of homicides over time compared to previous years. And then the third one is the type of vehicles that are robbed with most frequency in Cali. And then on top of that, we work with communication students who convert these rather data-centric, not exactly completely accessible data visualizations into sound bites. And in the bottom left, you see here, never in this history of the city have there been fewer homicides than there were in 2020, et cetera, et cetera. So it's another example of the work that's produced by volunteers and researchers based on the data that previously was not available. And these students, what we found was that previously they just worked with data they could find on the internet. So a lot of these students were working with Tour de France data. And we said, no, listen, work with data that matters for the city, and let's see what we find, and let's publish that. So what's coming up? Air quality. It's COVID, it's an environment, it's COVID related. Air quality is worsening in most cities, and this generates heavy costs. And here you can see some pieces from around the world on the worsening air pollution situation and the cost of that air quality. I'm going to fly through some slides here because I'm running over on time, but our next topic after security is now air quality and air quality sensors. So we're going to measure air quality in Cali. DAGMA, the public agency, the official public agency in charge, does not do a good job of measuring air quality in Cali. They have some 8 or 9 sensors, some of which don't work, some of which don't even report the most important particulate matter that affects air quality. And there are only 9 of these stations for a city of 2.5 million people that's growing 5 to 10% every year. So we're going to build on that. We're going to obtain 100 air quality sensors. The first 22 are going into action this month and next month. We're going to put these nano sensors across the city in the houses of citizens. So we have enrolled citizens to deploy sensors in their own houses, and we're going to put a specific emphasis on getting volunteers who are girls in the age range 18 to 24. So there's an element of STEM here and gender balancing here. And we're going to mobilize them. So we're going to teach them about basic data, basic visualization, the importance of climate, and the importance of activism, mobilizing these people and these points of view, and getting more awareness about this important topic. Again, we are partnering with people who are already doing this. So in Bogota, there's an organization called CKAN, and they've already set up the database, the data processes, the visualizations. They have sensors running. So we're piggybacking again on them, and with their collaboration, we are deploying this in Cali. It's a 9-month project. There's a setup, there's an activity phase, and then there's the promotion. I'm not going to go into this, but it's essentially setting up the dashboard, setting up the data flows, getting the sensors and getting them into place, testing them and calibrating them with official sensors to make sure everything. So it's a big prelude work that we must undertake before we do anything. And at the end, we promote the findings, and then we find a partner who's going to run this in the future. We want somebody else to run this so CHISPA can then focus on the next topic. So we'll set it up, we'll create the model, and then we delegate it and oversee it during time. It's going to cost around $60,000. 10% of that will be in know-how, like the technical capacity. We're building a team of experts in air quality locally, so doctoral students and professors who know about this topic and who can guide us in the pitfalls, etc. 40% will be on a STEM campaign in terms of outreach and public awareness, execution, 20% on sensors. So sensors cost around $125 each, and they're pretty much ready to go straight out of the box. And then 30% on execution. And these are some of the people that are helping us along the way. So that's CHISPA. The three things I wanted to talk about in 20 minutes, and I'm 2 minutes over, is who we are. So we're three professionals who dedicate 30 to 40% of our time to produce high-value social impact projects to improve quality of life in Cali. Second, we built a data platform because we feel strongly that confidence in public entities is at an all-time low, and that needs to change. So we are collaborating with public entities while maintaining a healthy distance, I must say. And we're focusing not so much on the platform, but the findings and the communication strategies that emerge and are necessary to get the messaging out in the vocabulary, in the formats, and in the channels where people consume this information. And we work with partners. So we're not doing this alone. And if anybody is interested in knowing more about the technicals or the methodology or how we've done that with a view to replicating it in your own cities or countries, then absolutely the door is open. Thank you so much for your time. Muchas gracias.
Thanks a lot. Like, you didn't have to rush. It's fine. I think we have enough time, so no worries.
Okay. I prefer discussion rather than just listening to myself.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. What you do is great. And let's open the floor for questions. I encourage people to either drop things in the chat or questions, or just raise your hands. Okay, so Ian.
Thank you for that presentation. That was really interesting, and I'll check out the site and the channels that you posted. Those look great. Did I hear you correctly to say that one of the products that you produce from the data is memes that you're using to share?
It's not a product, but we're using memes as a format to get key messages out. So say, for example, in the case of homicides, where people just simply don't believe that the homicide rate has halved in the last 8 years. So we reinforce that message. Listen, because people here are very negative, they're very fatalist, that it's never been worse. In fact, it's never been better. But people refuse to believe that. So we have a homicide rate that's going like this, and we have a public perception of security that's going like this. And we need to counteract that because it has knock-on effects. So we like I said, we want to get to the mango seller. We want to get to people who don't visit data portals normally and get that messaging out to them.
And is that, do you use Instagram for that type of thing, or which channels do you use?
Yeah, mostly Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp groups. We work a network of WhatsApp groups. And then by virtue of having partnerships, we have alternative channels as well through the university system. So we have our reports and our memes are shared that way. But it's mostly Instagram. We try, and Colombia is, maybe it's a peculiarity to here, but we're very big on Instagram. We're very big on social media. We're very big on WhatsApp. We like to talk. But it's to counteract this weird perception of it's bad and getting worse all the time, when in fact the opposite is pretty much true.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing. Also, Ian, we use Canva, Canva.com to talk about tooling. Canva is a great resource to build memes, to build visuals. Very easy, very intuitive, if that helps.
Thanks. Joe, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So John, I can relate to some of the things you mentioned. I originally am from the Philippines, and the Philippines actually has the, I don't know if the honor to be the #1 social media user, and Colombia's #2. And I can relate to the fact that you know, the fourth estate, the press, is not really trusted anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, worldwide, but more so in developing countries like the Philippines and Colombia. And I'm quite interested in your techniques and strategies to use memes and all these things to counter this mis and disinformation. It seems to me like almost like a Herculean Sisyphean task that
yeah, but we don't have the answer. We don't have the strategy, but we're testing and we're experimenting all the time. So we try to provoke change, and if it means having to do graffiti or on-street activism, we'll try that too. But insofar as it's possible, we try to do everything on the internet, and we try to do it by not fighting the administration, but by collaborating and cajoling them and showing them, listen, you've got to open up. The public need to know. They're not going to, like, people don't even report crime here because they don't have confidence in the police. People don't pay taxes because they don't think they think it's going to go into a corrupt system and be stolen.
Yeah, I'd be interested if you're tracking engagement metrics in terms of the effectivity of the memes and the strategies used. But,
okay,
you know,
I'll take a note, and if you want to contact me afterwards, I'll get them to you.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing.
Adria, you can go.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, John, for the presentation. This is a really exciting project. I'm just curious if I understood correctly from the presentation. It is your organization right now who is responsible for all the, like, creating the data and validating
Yes.
it and publishing. So I'm curious about, like, medium to long term. How do you plan on making this, like, sustainable?
Okay.
Do you want to plan on, like, a community of people that publish the data?
Great idea. We have toyed with converting this to a startup. We have good relationships with an organization called Cities Today, which is a network of CTOs and city administrators and mayors. So we're still toying with that idea of packaging this and selling it and then financing our project that way.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, we have tried exhaustively to get funding from nonprofits, from foundations, etc. It hasn't worked. Now we are talking to sugar daddies. So we know a couple of millionaires, and we're trying to convince them to put some money in. And finally, and I think what's actually going to work is we're going to use a platform called Benevity, I think it's called. Benevity is a platform whereby corporations, companies and nonprofits can sign up, and there's matching. So you create your profile for your nonprofit, and then you do your evangelism, and you contact these companies and say, hey, listen, tell your employees about this. And the employees will put $10 down, and the company does matching funding. So that hasn't been done in Cali before. So we hope to be the groundbreakers there, and that's our fourth strategy. But we've bootstrapped this. This is our money. This is our time. This is our effort. I don't think we've received a pittance at, like, very small donations to help sustain this. But we're also pretty confident that once they see the product of our work and the outcomes, particularly with air quality, because it's kind of a sexier topic now and more visible, then we should be okay. But it's tough. I'll not mince my words. It's been really tough, but it's been really satisfying, and it's really important. So we're going to continue.
Amazing. Good luck.
Thank you. One of the things I wanted to mention that occurs to me is in developing countries in particular, there's a lot of reluctance from the government, despite the fact that many countries now have open data mandates. There's a lot of reluctance to share sensitive information. So we had to fight the National Police of Colombia, which is not a small undertaking, because they started closing down their data. So they stopped releasing segments of data that were, they argued, sensitive. And we said, no, this data should be open. It was open. You don't go backwards. So we mobilized around that. And so, like, I think our work is divided in two parts. We take advantage of existing data, and we caretake that, but we also produce data. So we'll be producing data on air quality. Later, we'll probably do something on water quality and availability. But there are two choices in this. You rely on other people's data, or you produce your own data, and they're quite distinct undertakings.
What do you think is your biggest challenge? Like you mentioned many barriers and many things you're fighting with, but what would you say that it's the toughest one, let's say?
I would say, like Joel mentioned, it's getting the message out. So converting noise to signal, converting big data into small data, and then making it bite-sized and delivered at the right time in the right way to the people that matter. So that is probably the biggest challenge. The data and the technology, you know, it's not exactly a commodity, but it's easy. It's an engineering challenge. Design certainly, but communications is probably something that we need to get better and better at. And build that network, build those communities over time. That's probably the challenge. Other challenges, maybe data quality from time to time is tricky, but again, that's all very solvable.
Probably the consciousness of people.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we want to change habits. We want to change, we want to get people out of cars and into bikes. So we want people to build more trust in one another as well as in public entities, if that's justified. But it's exactly that, Joanne. It's consciousness. It's. I mean, this is activism at the end of the day, but we want to show that, you know, there's another important part here. They want to show that people from the private sector can do something philanthropic, so to speak, with no return necessarily, no tangible, no monetary return. And we want to set that pattern in motion. We want to I hate to use the word weaponize, we want to make it a more commonplace for people and for organizations to do that. And we're getting a lot of great feedback. Yeah. Like we're putting together a brain team, like, how do you say that in English? I forgot my English. Like a brain squad, like technologists, like senior technologists, senior data people who are coming to guide us on what we should and shouldn't be doing, like pitfalls, opportunities, networking. There's that willingness there that we're tapping into, which is great.
Yeah.
Brains trust. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah. All right, guys. Do we have any other questions?
If anybody wants to use this platform to replicate it, by all means do. We can provide you the keys of the car, and we can provide some support if that's what you're interested in. It's completely open. We'd love for other cities to use this.
Sounds great. Okay, I'm aware of time. If you have no more questions, or if maybe somebody wants to share something. If not, we can go to closing.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for the time and the opportunity. I hope it was interesting and useful.
Yeah, actually, just a little announcement following up on your Rubric event announcement, Jonna, earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, for New York City Open Data Week, I just wanted to let the community know that we're doing a presentation on March 5 about a tool we developed called QSV. It's mainly a data slicing, analyze, wrangling tool for CSVs, but we'll be releasing some deep CKAN integration on that day, and we'll demo it during New York City Open Data Week. Thank you.
Super.
Just dropped some links. regarding our CKAN monthly live. So if you want to present on CKAN monthly live, you can fill out a form. I dropped link in the chat. Also, links, as you know, are available in the meeting doc, and the link is at the beginning of our chat. So yeah, if you want to present, just fill out the form and we'll contact you. If you want to suggest a topic for next meetup, you are really welcome to do it, and you can add it also in the link that I shared. You can check out our website, CKAN.org. We blog there from time to time. You can also expect a recap of this meetup and also the recording, the link to the recording. You can chat with us on Gitter. We have discussions on GitHub. You can ask questions on Stack Overflow. And for security-related issues, you can email at security@ckan.org. Do not forget to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We share interesting stuff there. Now, regarding the slides, I can see Joel asked if slides will be shared, and John very quickly shared them. So I will upload them probably on the blog post, if that's fine with you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this presentation. It was really interesting to hear more about what you do. We wish you good luck, and yeah, we'll help in any ways that we can. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for that, and also the years of support that Datopian has given us. We're extremely grateful. Thank you so much.
It's really pleasant to be part of something so nice and useful and great for people and for the communities. So it's a pleasure. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. See you. Have a
Bye,
good
everybody.
day.
Nice to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks for being here.